I think I didn't do anything wrong, just smiled when his friend touched my arm at the party. But now that I've been served divorce papers in front of my parents, I wonder if maybe I crossed a line I never saw. Honestly, I thought he was just being dramatic until the documents arrived. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The birthday party at Romano's restaurant was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the beginning of the end of my marriage, though I didn't realize it at the time. I'm Eudora Finch, 34 years old, and I work as an administrative assistant at Henderson & Associates. My husband Leo is 36, a quiet IT consultant who's always been more comfortable with computers than people. Eudora, you look absolutely stunning tonight, Martin Rowe said as he approached our table. Martin had been Leo's friend since college, though they were complete opposites. Where Leo was reserved and thoughtful, Martin was outgoing and charming. His wife Dylan sat across the room, her eyes tracking his every movement. I felt a flutter of excitement at the compliment. Leo rarely noticed when I dressed up anymore. Thank you, Martin. You're so sweet, I replied, touching his arm playfully. Martin's hand lingered on my shoulder as he leaned closer. That dress really brings out your eyes. Leo's a lucky man. His fingers traced down my arm, and instead of pulling away, I found myself smiling wider. Martin, stop it, I laughed, but made no effort to move away from his touch. You're such a flirt. Leo's mother, Evelyn, watched from across the table with a concerned expression. She was 62, always elegant and proper, and I could see disapproval flickering in her eyes. Peter, Leo's father, seemed oblivious as he chatted with other guests about his retirement plans. Looks like someone's getting all the attention tonight, my best friend Margot whispered in my ear, grinning mischievously. I can practically see the sparks flying. I glanced at Leo, expecting him to join the conversation, or at least acknowledge what was happening. Instead, he sat silently, his jaw tight, staring at his untouched plate. His silence frustrated me more than any argument would have. Leo never tells me I look nice anymore, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, letting Martin's hand remain on my arm. It's refreshing when someone actually notices the effort I put in. Dylan Rowe's voice cut through the chatter like ice. Martin, your wife is sitting right here. Her tone was sharp, her eyes flashing with anger as she stared directly at me. Oh, Dylan, don't be so serious, I said with a dismissive wave. We're all friends here. Martin's just being nice. But Martin's touch felt like more than friendship, and deep down, I knew it. His thumb brushed against my wrist, sending a thrill through me that I hadn't felt in years. Leo's continued silence only made Martin's attention more intoxicating. Some friends know how to appreciate what they have, Martin said, his voice low and meaningful. Others take beautiful things for granted. Leo's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. Every conversation at the table stopped. His face was unreadable, but something in his eyes made my stomach clench with unexpected fear. I need some air, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Leo, don't be ridiculous, I called after him. We're just talking. But he was already walking away, his shoulders rigid with tension. The table fell into uncomfortable silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware and distant restaurant chatter. He's being so dramatic, I said to fill the awkward quiet, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I was just being friendly. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. Perhaps some boundaries should be respected, dear. What boundaries? I snapped, suddenly defensive. I can't even have a conversation without Leo getting jealous. That's his problem, not mine. My mother, Janet, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Eudora's right. Leo has always been too cold, too distant. A woman needs to feel appreciated. But as I looked around the table, I saw doubt creeping into everyone's faces. Dylan's expression was pure contempt. Evelyn looked disappointed, and even Margot seemed uncomfortable now. Martin squeezed my hand one more time before returning to his own table. "Don't worry about it, Eudora. Some people just don't understand friendship." As the evening continued, Leo never returned to the table. I found him later, standing alone in the parking lot, staring at his phone. When he looked up at me, his expression was completely unreadable, and for the first time that night, I felt a chill of genuine worry. The drive home was suffocating in its silence. Leo gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles while I sat in the passenger seat, rehearsing all the reasons why I'd done nothing wrong. Our 7-year-old daughter Sophie was spending the night at her grandmother's house, which now seemed like both a blessing and a curse. "Are you seriously going to ignore me all night?" I finally asked, as we pulled into our driveway in the quiet suburban neighborhood we'd called home for 5 years. Leo turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. "What would you like me to say, Eudora? Maybe that you're sorry for embarrassing me in front of everyone. That you realize you overreacted to a harmless conversation." He let out a bitter laugh. "Harmless, right." Inside our house, the familiar surroundings felt foreign and tense. The living room where we'd watched countless movies together, the kitchen where we'd cooked Sunday breakfasts as a family. Everything seemed different now, charged with an electricity I didn't understand. "I don't know what's gotten into you lately," I said, following him to our bedroom. "You barely talk to me anymore. You work late every night. When was the last time you even told me I looked pretty?" Leo sat on the edge of our bed, his head in his hands. "When was the last time you acted like you wanted to be my wife, instead of looking for attention from other men?" "That's not fair," I shot back. "Martin is your friend. We were just talking." "He had his hands all over you, Eudora, in front of everyone, and you loved every second of it. You're being paranoid, and even if he was being a little flirty, so what? At least someone notices me. At least someone makes me feel like a woman, instead of just a roommate who happens to share your bed." Leo looked up at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but something colder, something final. "I see," he said quietly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Eudora. Nothing at all." He stood and walked to our closet, pulling out a duffel bag. My heart started racing as I watched him pack clothes, toiletries, and his laptop charger. "What are you doing?" "I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. I need space to think." "Leo, you're being ridiculous. Come to bed. We can work this out." But he was already walking toward the door. "Good night, Eudora." I stood alone in our bedroom, staring at the space where my husband should have been. This wasn't how the night was supposed to end. I was supposed to be the injured party here, the neglected wife who deserved sympathy and attention. Downstairs, I could see the glow of Leo's phone screen through the crack under the living room door. He was awake, probably texting or browsing the internet. Part of me wanted to go down and force him to talk, to make him understand that he was pushing me away with his coldness and jealousy. Instead, I lay in our empty bed, replaying Martin's touch on my arm, the way his eyes had lingered on my face, the thrill of feeling desired again. Leo was overreacting, I told myself. Men could be friends with women without it meaning anything inappropriate. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the image of Leo's face when he'd stood up from that table. Something had changed in that moment, something I was only beginning to understand. My phone buzzed with a text message. "Hope you got home safely. Sorry if I caused any trouble tonight. You looked beautiful. M." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Don't worry about it. Some people are just too sensitive." The response came quickly. "His loss is someone else's gain." I deleted the conversation before putting my phone away, but the flutter of excitement in my chest lingered long into the night. The next Monday at Henderson and Associates, I couldn't concentrate on my administrative tasks. The weekend had been awkward and tense, with Leo maintaining his distance and speaking only when necessary about Sophie's schedule or household matters. "You look exhausted," Margot said, finding me in the break room during lunch. "Rough weekend?" I poured coffee with shaking hands. Leo's being impossible. He's convinced something inappropriate happened with Martin at the party, which is completely insane. Men can be so possessive, Margot agreed, settling into the chair across from me. But honestly, Eudora, Martin was being pretty obvious. Even I noticed. Noticed what? That he complimented my dress? That he's actually nice to me, unlike my own husband? He was touching you a lot, and the way he looked at you... Margot trailed off. I'm just saying, maybe Leo has a point. I felt betrayed by my best friend's words. Not you, too. I thought you'd understand. You're always telling me I deserve better than Leo's cold shoulder. I do think you deserve better, but maybe flirting with his married friend isn't the answer. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Martin. Thinking about our conversation Saturday night, would love to continue it over coffee sometime. I quickly turned the phone face down, but not before Margot caught a glimpse of the screen. Eudora? It's nothing. He's just being friendly. That didn't look friendly. That looked like a man asking you on a date. You're being dramatic, just like Leo. But even as I said it, my heart was racing. Martin was asking to see me alone, and the thought both terrified and excited me. When had I become the kind of woman who entertained such thoughts? The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to our office. A young woman I didn't recognize approached my desk, her expression serious. Are you Eudora Finch? Yes, can I help you? I'm Jessica, Dylan Rowe's friend. I'm temping here this week. Her voice was cool, professional. Dylan asked me to give you this. She handed me a folded piece of paper and walked away without another word. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a screenshot of text messages between Martin and someone labeled E, clearly me, though I didn't remember all of these conversations. Messages about how beautiful I was, how I deserved better, how he couldn't stop thinking about me. At the bottom, Dylan had written, I know exactly what kind of woman you are. Stay away from my husband. My face burned with embarrassment and fear. Had Martin been saving our conversations? Some of these messages seemed more intimate than I remembered sending, but looking at them now, I could see how they might be misinterpreted. I immediately called Martin. We need to talk. Dylan has screenshots of our texts. Calm down, Eudora. She's just jealous because she knows her marriage is falling apart. This isn't about you. It is about me. She's threatening me. Meet me after work. Parking garage on 5th Street, level 3. We'll figure this out together. I knew I shouldn't go. Every rational part of my brain screamed that meeting Martin alone would only make things worse. But I felt trapped, panicked, and Leo's continued coldness at home made Martin's support feel like a lifeline. That evening, I told Leo I was working late on a project. He barely looked up from his laptop. Fine, he said. I'll pick up Sophie from after-school care. His indifference stung. 3 months ago, he would have offered to bring me dinner or asked when I'd be home. Now, he seemed relieved to have me out of the house. The parking garage was dimly lit and nearly empty. Martin was waiting by his car, looking handsome and concerned. When he pulled me into a hug, I let myself melt into his arms for just a moment. Dylan's losing her mind, he said. She's been going through my phone, accusing me of things that aren't true. But some of those messages were taken out of context. You know that. We're friends, Eudora. Good friends who care about each other. There's nothing wrong with that. As he spoke, his hands rested on my waist, and I didn't pull away. In that moment, with Leo's rejection fresh in my mind and Martin's attention warming me like sunlight, I made a choice that would change everything. I kissed him. It was soft, brief, and immediately followed by crushing guilt. But Martin smiled and kissed me back, and for those few minutes in that dark parking garage, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. This is crazy, I whispered. Sometimes crazy is exactly what we need, Martin replied. I drove home with my heart pounding, knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. Leo was asleep on the couch when I arrived, and I crept upstairs to our empty bedroom. my lips still tingling from another man's kiss. Sunday lunch at the Finch family home had been a tradition for years, but this week felt different from the moment I walked through the door. Evelyn greeted me with a polite but cool smile, while Peter seemed uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as he asked about work. Sophie clung to my side, sensing the tension that had been building at home all week. Leo had maintained his distance, sleeping on the couch and speaking to me only about practical matters. I'd convinced myself he was being childish, but seeing his family's reaction made me wonder if the story had spread beyond our marriage. "How's everyone doing?" I asked brightly, trying to project normalcy as we gathered around the familiar dining table. "We're concerned," Evelyn said directly, her 62 years of experience cutting through any pretense. "Leo seems very troubled lately." "He's being overly sensitive about a harmless interaction at a party," I replied, serving Sophie her favorite mashed potatoes. Martin Rowe complimented my dress, and Leo acted like I'd committed adultery. Peter shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Perhaps there's more to it than that, Eudora." "There isn't. I was being friendly to your son's college friend. Since when is that a crime?" Leo sat silently at the head of the table, cutting his roast beef with mechanical precision. His silence was starting to unnerve me more than any argument would have. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy sleep in your room anymore?" Sophie asked innocently, her 7-year-old voice cutting through the adult tension like a knife. The table fell silent. I felt heat creep up my neck as everyone stared at me, waiting for an explanation. "Daddy's just been working late and didn't want to wake Mommy," I said quickly. "Right, Leo?" Leo looked up from his plate for the first time during the meal. "That's one way to put it." "What's that supposed to mean?" I snapped, my carefully maintained composure cracking. "It means I'm tired of pretending everything is normal when it's not." Evelyn leaned forward. "Leo, what exactly happened at that party?" Before Leo could answer, the doorbell rang. Peter went to answer it, returning with Dylan Rowe, her face flushed with anger and determination. "I'm sorry to interrupt your family dinner," Dylan said, her voice shaking with rage, "but I need to say something to your daughter-in-law." My stomach dropped. "Dylan, this isn't the time or place." "When is the time and place, Eudora? When you're texting my husband at midnight? When you're meeting him in parking garages? When you're destroying 2 families with your selfishness?" Sophie looked between the adults with wide, frightened eyes. Leo immediately stood and scooped her up. "Sophie, why don't you go play in Grandpa's study?" he said gently. "The adults need to talk." After Sophie left the room, Dylan turned back to me with fury blazing in her eyes. "I have screenshots of your messages. I have photos of you two together. I know about the kiss in the parking garage on 5th Street. The blood drained from my face. "Dylan, you're misunderstanding." "Am I?" "Because Martin confessed everything last night. He told me how you've been pursuing him, how you complained about your husband, how you kissed him and begged him to leave me." "That's not true," I protested, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Leo's quiet voice cut through my denials. "Is it true about the kiss?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. I looked around the table at the faces of people who had been my family for 8 years. Evelyn's disappointment, Peter's shock, Dylan's righteous anger, and Leo's devastating calm. It was one kiss. It didn't mean anything. I was confused and hurt because you've been so cold to me, Leo. I never meant for any of this to happen. The admission fell like a bomb in the quiet dining room. Leo nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already known. "I see," he said, using the same eerily calm tone from the night of the party. "Leo, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. A moment of weakness that lasted 3 weeks of secret messages and meetings." Dylan pulled out her phone and began reading. "Here's one from Tuesday. I can't stop thinking about you. Leo doesn't understand me the way you do." And here's another from Thursday. "I wish I'd married someone who appreciated me." Each message felt like a slap. I'd written them in moments of frustration and loneliness, but hearing them read aloud made them sound calculating and cruel. "That's enough," Leo said quietly. He stood up from the table, his movements deliberate and calm. "I'll be meeting with a lawyer tomorrow morning." "Leo, no!" I jumped up, reaching for his arm. "Don't do anything rash. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." He looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. "Some things can't be fixed, Eudora. Some lines, once crossed, change everything. You're going to destroy our family over a kiss, over some text messages. I'm not destroying anything. You already did that." He walked out of the dining room, leaving me standing there with his parents and Dylan Rowe, feeling smaller and more exposed than I'd ever felt in my life. "I hope it was worth it," Dylan said before following Leo out. Evelyn and Peter sat in stunned silence. Finally, Peter spoke. "Eudora, I think you should leave." "But this is family dinner. We always have family dinner." "Not anymore," Evelyn said sadly. "Not after this." I gathered my purse and called for Sophie, my hands shaking with humiliation and fear. As we drove home, Sophie asked why everyone seemed angry, and I had no answer that wouldn't destroy her world even further. Leo didn't come home that night, or the next. I was truly alone for the first time in 8 years, and the silence of our house felt like a preview of my future. Tuesday morning brought a call from Leo's lawyer's office, requesting that I be available at 2 p.m. for document service. I had no idea what that meant, but the formal tone made my anxiety spike. I took the afternoon off work, claiming a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue. At exactly 2 p.m., Leo walked through our front door, followed by a stern-looking woman in a business suit and a man with a briefcase. "Eudora Finch?" the woman asked. "Yes." "I'm Sarah Mitchell, Mr. Finch's attorney. This is James Chen, a private investigator we've retained." My legs felt weak. "Private investigator?" Leo spoke for the first time. "Sit down, Eudora. We need to talk." I perched on the edge of our couch, the same couch where we'd cuddled watching movies just months ago. Now it felt like I was sitting in a courtroom. "Over the past 3 weeks," Sarah Mitchell began, "Mr. Chen has documented extensive evidence of your extramarital affair with Martin Rowe. It wasn't an affair, it was just text messages spanning 6 weeks, including explicit emotional intimacy and plans to meet secretly," she continued, consulting her notes. "Photographic evidence of clandestine meetings in public locations, bank records showing you purchased new lingerie and perfume charged to the joint account, and testimony from multiple witnesses regarding inappropriate public behavior." James Chen opened his briefcase and spread photographs across our coffee table. Images of me and Martin at the parking garage, at a coffee shop I'd forgotten about, walking close together near my office building. In the photos, we looked like lovers, not friends. "The most damaging evidence," Sarah continued, "is the dashcam footage from Mr. Chen's vehicle, showing you entering Martin Rowe's residence last Thursday evening while his wife was out of town and not leaving until nearly midnight." My heart stopped. I remembered that night. Martin had called upset about a fight with Dylan, and I'd gone to comfort him. We'd talked, shared wine, and yes, we'd kissed again. But seeing it documented like criminal evidence made it seem sordid and premeditated. "Leo, please," I whispered. "Let me explain." "I'm done with explanations," Leo said. His voice was steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. "I'm done with lies, with gaslighting, with being made to feel crazy for noticing what was happening in my own marriage." Sarah Mitchell handed me a thick manila envelope. Petition for divorce citing adultery, request for primary custody of Sophie Finch, and a restraining order requiring you to cease all contact with Martin Rowe. The papers felt heavy in my hands. Legal language swam before my eyes. Irreconcilable differences, breakdown of marriage, best interests of the child. "You can't take Sophie from me," I said, panic rising in my throat. The evidence shows a pattern of deception and poor judgment that calls your parenting fitness into question, Sarah replied. However, Mr. Finch is willing to negotiate reasonable visitation if you don't contest the divorce. This is insane. You're destroying our family over a friendship that got a little out of hand. Leo leaned forward, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real emotion in his face. A friendship? Eudora, you told another man you wished you'd married him instead of me. You snuck around behind my back for weeks. You lied to my face every single day. I was lonely. You never paid attention to me anymore. So you decided to have an affair instead of talking to me about it? It wasn't an affair. James Chen pulled out his phone and pressed play. My own voice filled the room. I think I'm falling in love with you, Martin. What are we going to do about our marriages? I didn't remember saying those words, but there they were, recorded somehow during one of our meetings. The woman on that recording sounded like a stranger. Desperate, manipulative, selfish. Where did you get that? Martin Rowe is cooperating with our investigation, Sarah explained. He's provided recordings, messages, and testimony in exchange for avoiding being named as a co-respondent in the divorce. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Martin had been recording our conversations, saving our messages, documenting our relationship like evidence for a case he knew was coming. He used me, I whispered. Yes, Leo said simply, and you let him, because it felt good to be wanted by someone, even if it meant destroying everything we'd built together. Sophie's voice came from the top of the stairs. Daddy, are you coming home now? Leo's composure finally cracked. He looked up at our daughter with tears in his eyes. I'm here, sweetheart. Come down and see Daddy. As Sophie ran into Leo's arms, I realized I was watching my family reunite without me. I had become the outsider, the problem to be managed, the mistake to be corrected. You have 30 days to respond to the petition, Sarah said, packing up her documents. I strongly advise you to retain counsel. After they left, I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal. Photos of secret meetings, transcripts of intimate conversations, bank records of my deception. It was all there in black and white, undeniable proof of how far I'd fallen. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin. Dylan kicked me out. Maybe this is our chance to be together. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Martin had recorded our conversations, saved our messages, and handed them over to Leo's lawyer. He'd destroyed both our marriages and was now pretending it was romantic destiny. For the first time in weeks, I saw the situation clearly. I hadn't been having a love affair. I'd been manipulated by a man who collected evidence of my weakness and used it to destroy my life when it became convenient. But the clarity came too late. The papers were served, the evidence was documented, and my marriage was over. The process server arrived on a Sunday morning while I was having breakfast with my parents. I'd moved back into my childhood bedroom after Leo filed for divorce, unable to afford our house on my administrative assistant salary alone. Eudora Finch, the young man asked when my mother answered the door. That's me, I said, walking to the entryway in my bathrobe. You've been served. He handed me an official envelope and left without ceremony. My hands shook as I opened it, though I knew what it contained. Final divorce decree, I read aloud. Custody arrangement, asset division. My mother, Janet, looked over my shoulder. What does it say about Sophie? Leo gets primary custody. I get alternating weekends and one evening per week. My voice cracked. He's taking my daughter away from me. This is outrageous, Janet said. We need to call a lawyer immediately. But I'd already consulted 3 attorneys, and they'd all told me the same thing. Leo had an airtight case. The evidence of my affair was overwhelming, and my behavior had been documented so thoroughly that fighting the custody arrangement would be expensive and futile. My father, who had been quietly reading his newspaper, finally spoke. Maybe Eudora should have thought about Sophie before she decided to run around with another man. "Dad, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but this mess is your own making. That boy Leo was good to you, good to our granddaughter. You threw it all away for what? Some excitement?" The doorbell rang again. This time it was Evelyn and Peter Finch, looking formal and uncomfortable. "We've come to collect Sophie's remaining belongings," Evelyn said. "Leo asked us to handle it to avoid any confrontation." "She's my daughter too," I protested. "Of course she is," Peter said gently. "But the court has made its decision based on what's best for Sophie. She needs stability right now." As they packed Sophie's toys, clothes, and books, I felt pieces of my life disappearing into cardboard boxes. The stuffed elephant she'd had since birth, the art supplies we'd used for countless craft projects, the bedtime stories I'd read to her every night for 7 years. "Can I at least say goodbye to her?" "She's with Leo at the new apartment," Evelyn said. "Perhaps it's better to let her settle in before visitation begins." "The new apartment?" "Leo found a place closer to Sophie's school. He's trying to minimize the disruption to her routine." After they left, I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of my adult life. My phone buzzed with messages from Martin, who was now staying in a hotel after Dylan filed for divorce as well. "We're both free now," his latest message read. "We can finally be together the way we always wanted." I blocked his number without responding. Whatever I'd thought I felt for Martin had died the moment I learned he'd been recording our conversations and building a case file of my indiscretions. The following Monday, I returned to work to find a pink slip on my desk. Henderson and Associates was restructuring, and my position was being eliminated. I knew the real reason. The scandal had reached my workplace through Dylan's friend Jessica, and my employer didn't want the drama affecting their professional reputation. Margot found me cleaning out my desk. "Eudora, I'm so sorry. This is all so unfair." "Is it?" I asked, packing my few personal belongings. "I made choices, Margot. Bad choices. This is what consequences look like. You made mistakes, but losing your job, your marriage, your daughter, the punishment doesn't fit the crime." "Doesn't it? I lied to my husband every day for weeks. I snuck around with his friend. I told another man I wished I'd married him instead of Leo. I destroyed 2 marriages and traumatized my child. What exactly should the consequences be for that?" Margot had no answer. That evening, Leo called to arrange my first supervised visitation with Sophie. "Supervised?" I asked. "Just for the first few visits until Sophie adjusts. She's been having nightmares about the family breaking up. The child psychologist thinks gradual reintroduction is best. I would never hurt Sophie. Not physically, no. But your choices have already hurt her, Eudora. She's 7 years old and doesn't understand why Mommy and Daddy can't live together anymore. Why strange adults were arguing in Grandma's dining room. Why her whole world fell apart. The weight of what I'd done to my innocent daughter hit me like a sledgehammer. In my pursuit of excitement and validation, I'd forgotten that my choices affected more than just myself. "Leo, I know I can't undo what I did, but..." "You're right, you can't undo it, but you can learn from it and be a better person going forward. For Sophie's sake, if not your own. Do you think, someday, could we ever be friends again?" There was a long pause. "I don't know, Eudora. I honestly don't know. Right now, I'm focused on helping our daughter heal from the damage we've both caused." "We've both caused?" I should have addressed the problems in our marriage instead of withdrawing. I should have fought for us instead of shutting down. I'm not blameless in how we got here. His generosity in that moment, his willingness to accept partial responsibility, even after everything I'd done, made me realize what I'd truly lost. Leo wasn't just a good man, he was a better person than I'd ever been. 6 months later, I was working as a receptionist at a dental office, living in a studio apartment, and seeing Sophie every other weekend. The divorce was final, the custody arrangement was settled, and both our lives had moved on. Martin had moved to another state after his own divorce, leaving behind a trail of broken relationships and ruined families. I never heard from him again. Leo had started dating someone new, a kindergarten teacher named Amy who Sophie adored. When I saw them together at Sophie's school play, I felt a pang of loss, but also something unexpected, relief. Leo deserved happiness, and Sophie deserved a stable home with people who put her needs first. As I watched my ex-husband and daughter laughing together in the audience, I finally understood the true cost of my choices. I hadn't just lost a marriage. I'd lost the chance to be the person I could have been, the mother Sophie deserved, the wife Leo had needed. The papers had been served, the consequences had been paid, and life had moved on without me. I had learned the hardest lesson of all, that some mistakes can't be forgiven, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some choices echo through generations. But in that moment, watching my daughter shine on stage, I made a new choice. I chose to be grateful for the time I still had with Sophie, to be the best version of myself during our visits, and to never again let my own needs overshadow the people I claimed to love. It was too late to save my marriage, but it wasn't too late to save my relationship with my daughter. And for the first time since that night at Romano's restaurant, that felt like enough.